the stranger appeared at Vincent Fletcher's cabin, just as the first heavy snow began falling across the Montana territory. Her silhouette, barely visible through the white curtain, descending from the gray November sky of 1877. Vincent had been splitting wood for his stove when he spotted her stumbling through the drifts, her thin dress offering no protection against the bitter cold that swept down from the mountains. He dropped his axe immediately and ran toward her, his boots crunching through the freshly fallen snow, watching as she collapsed just 50 yards from his door. "Madam," Vincent called out, reaching her crumpled form and kneeling beside her. Her lips were blue, her dark hair matted with ice, and her skin felt like touching frozen leather. Without hesitation, he scooped her into his arms and carried her toward his cabin, kicking the door open with his boot and bringing her inside where the fire still crackled warmly in the stone hearth. He laid her gently on his bed, the only one in the small one-room structure, and quickly began wrapping her in every blanket he owned. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes closed, and for a terrifying moment Vincent thought she might already be too far gone. He removed her frozen shoes and rubbed her feet vigorously, trying to restore circulation, then did the same with her hands. The woman groaned softly, a good sign that life still fought within her. Vincent heated water on his stove and prepared a weak broth from his dwindling supplies. He had stocked up for winter, planning to trap through the cold months in relative comfort, but he had only prepared for one person. Still, as he looked at the woman fighting for life in his bed, he knew there was no question about what he would do. Over the next 3 days, Vincent nursed her back from the edge of death. He learned her name was Clara, though she revealed little else about herself in those first fevered hours. "Clara Kendrick," she whispered when she finally could speak clearly, her voice carrying an accent he could not quite place. Her eyes, when they finally focused on him properly, were a striking shade of amber, and they held depths of experience that seemed at odds with her youthful face. Vincent guessed she was perhaps 20 or 21, not much younger than his own 24 years. "Where were you headed?" Vincent asked on the 4th morning, as Clara sat up in bed and accepted a cup of hot coffee from his hands. Outside, the snow continued to fall steadily, already piling 3 feet high around the cabin. Clara looked toward the window, her expression distant. "Nowhere particular, everywhere. I have been walking for many months now." "From where?" She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the warm tin cup. "From a place that no longer exists, from a life that was taken." Vincent recognized the look in her eyes. He had seen it in the mirror often enough in the years since the war. Loss. Grief. The kind that carved out pieces of your soul and left hollow spaces behind. He did not press further. As the days turned into weeks, Clara regained her strength, though the winter storms showed no sign of letting up. Vincent shared everything he had with her. His flour became their flour. His dried beans and salted meat became their shared sustenance. His coffee, sugar, and the precious few luxuries he had saved for the long, dark months ahead, he divided equally between them. "You should not do this," Clara said one evening, watching him portion out their dinner. "You did not plan for 2 people. You will starve yourself." Vincent shook his head, stirring the thin stew in his pot. "I will manage. Spring will come soon enough." "Spring is 4 months away, Vincent, maybe 5 in this country." He met her eyes across the small table he had built years ago from pine logs. "Then we will both be hungry together, but we will be alive. That counts for something." Clara studied him in the firelight, and something shifted in her expression. "Why did you help me? You do not know me." "I could be anyone. Dangerous, even." Vincent considered this, ladling stew into their bowls. "I suppose I could have left you in the snow, but then I would have to live with that choice every day for the rest of my life. seemed like a heavier burden than sharing some food. Most men would not see it that way. I am not most men, I suppose. The winter deepened around them. Vincent taught Clara how to set snares for rabbits and how to read the weather in the behavior of the birds. She proved an adept student, quick and observant. In return, she shared stories of the plants that grew in the mountains during warmer months, which ones healed and which ones harmed. She knew things about the land that Vincent, for all his years in Montana territory, had never learned. Who taught you these things? He asked one afternoon as they checked their trap lines together, the snow crunching beneath their feet. My grandmother, Clara said softly. She knew every plant, every animal, every season. She could read the world like you read a book. She sounds like a wise woman. She was. She is gone now. They all are. Vincent heard the weight of those words, the finality, but Clara said nothing more, and he respected her silence. By January, their supplies had dwindled to almost nothing. Vincent gave Clara the larger portions, and when she protested, he simply smiled and said he had eaten a big breakfast, though she knew he had not. His clothes began to hang looser on his frame, and Clara noticed the hollowness forming in his cheeks. "You are starving yourself for me," she said one night, her voice tight with emotion. "I am making sure we both survive," Vincent corrected. "There is a difference. Not much of one from where I sit." He looked at her across the dimly lit cabin, the fire burning low to conserve wood. "Clara, I found you dying in the snow. I brought you inside. That made you my responsibility. I do not do things halfway. You are a fool. Perhaps, but I am a fool with a clear conscience." Despite the hardship, or perhaps because of it, something grew between them in that isolated cabin. They talked for hours in the evenings, sharing stories from their vastly different lives. Vincent told her about growing up on a farm in Missouri, about losing his parents to fever when he was 16, about drifting west after the war looking for something he could never quite name. Clara, more guarded with her past, slowly revealed pieces of herself. She spoke of running, of soldiers, of fire and blood, though she never gave specifics. Vincent understood she had survived something terrible, something that left scars deeper than any blade could cut. One night in early February, as they sat close to the fire to ward off the brutal cold, Clara suddenly spoke into the silence. "I am Cheyenne," she said quietly. "My mother was full-blooded. My father was a French trapper. They both died when soldiers attacked our camp 7 years ago. I was 14. I survived by hiding under the bodies of the dead." Vincent felt his breath catch in his throat. He said nothing, letting her continue. "Since then, I have been moving, hiding, trying to find what remains of my mother's people. I heard there were Cheyenne camps to the north, near the Canadian border. I was trying to reach them when winter caught me." "I am sorry," Vincent said, the words feeling inadequate for the magnitude of her loss. Clara looked at him, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. "You gave me your food, your shelter, your only blankets. You are starving yourself so I might live." "Why?" Vincent reached out slowly and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "Because every life matters, because you deserved help when you needed it, because it was the right thing to do." Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks, the first Vincent had seen her cry. "The world has not shown me much rightness. Then maybe it is time the world did better." Clara leaned forward, and Vincent met her halfway, their lips finding each other in the firelight. The kiss was soft, tentative, carrying the weight of all their shared suffering and unexpected connection. When they parted, Clara rested her forehead against his. "I do not want to bring you trouble," she whispered. "You are not trouble. You are the best thing that has walked into my life in a long time." They held each other that night as the wind howled outside, finding warmth and comfort in their closeness. Vincent felt something he had not felt in years, hope. By March, the worst of winter began to break. The days grew longer, the temperatures slightly less brutal. Vincent and Clara had survived on almost nothing for weeks, their bodies thin and weak, but they had survived together. Vincent set more traps, caught a few rabbits and one lucky deer that provided meat for several weeks. As Clara's strength returned with better food, she became restless. Vincent noticed her staring northward often, her expression troubled. "You want to keep looking for your people," he said one evening. It was not a question. Clara nodded slowly. "I need to know if any survived. If there are others. I have been alone for so long, Vincent, except for these months with you. I understand. Do you?" She turned to face him. "Because I also do not want to leave you." Vincent pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "Then we have a problem. Because I do not want you to leave either, but I cannot ask you to give up your search. Your people are your blood." They sat in silence for a long time, the fire crackling softly between them. Finally, Clara spoke. "Let me go north. Let me see if I can find them. If I do, I will tell them about you, about what you did for me, about who you are. And if you do not find them, then I will come back to you if you will have me." Vincent cupped her face in his hands. "I will have you, Clara, always, for as long as you want." They made love that night, tender and desperate, knowing their time together was coming to an end, at least for a while. In the darkness, Vincent memorized the feel of her skin, the sound of her breathing, the way she whispered his name. 3 days later, as the snow began to truly melt, Clara prepared to leave. Vincent packed what little supplies he could spare into a leather satchel. Dried meat, a small amount of flour, matches, a wool blanket. He pressed his best knife into her hands despite her protests. "Take it. I can make another." "Vincent, I cannot take everything you have." "You are not taking everything. You are taking what you need to survive. There is a difference." Clara strapped the knife to her belt and shouldered the pack. They stood outside his cabin in the early morning light, the mountains still capped with snow but the valley beginning to show patches of brown earth. "I will come back," Clara said, her voice thick with emotion. "I swear to you, Vincent Fletcher, I will find my people or I will return to you. Either way, you will see me again." Vincent kissed her deeply, pouring everything he felt into that kiss. "I will be waiting, right here, for as long as it takes." Clara touched his face one more time, then turned and walked away, heading north through the melting snow. Vincent stood watching until she disappeared over a ridge, his heart following her even as his feet remained planted in the mud outside his cabin. The weeks after Clara left were the longest of Vincent's life. He threw himself into work, repairing winter damage to his cabin, clearing land for a small garden, checking his trap lines obsessively. At night, alone in his bed, he imagined where she might be, whether she was safe, whether she had found her people. April passed into May. The mountains exploded with wildflowers, and game became plentiful again. Vincent shot 2 elk and dried the meat, storing it carefully. He told himself he was just being prepared for next winter, but he knew the truth. He was preparing for Clara's return, whenever that might be, may turn to June. The days grew long and warm, and Vincent began to wonder if he had been a fool. Perhaps Clara had found her people and decided to stay with them. Perhaps she had forgotten about the thin cowboy who had shared his winter supplies. Perhaps she had never truly meant to return at all. But even as doubt crept in, Vincent could not make himself believe it. He had seen the truth in Clara's eyes, felt it in her touch. She would come back. He had to believe that. Summer reached its peak in late June. Vincent was working on expanding his cabin, adding a second room, when he heard something that made him drop his hammer. Voices. Many voices, speaking in a language he did not understand. He walked around to the front of his cabin and stopped dead in his tracks. Clara stood at the head of a group of perhaps 40 people, men, women, and children, all dressed in traditional Cheyenne clothing. Behind them, horses carried bundles and supplies. The group had stopped about 100 yards from his cabin, clearly uncertain about approaching closer. But Clara walked forward, a huge smile on her face, and Vincent ran to meet her. He caught her in his arms, lifting her off the ground and spinning her around as she laughed with pure joy. "You came back," he said, his voice breaking. "I told you I would. I always keep my promises." When he finally set her down, Clara took his hand and led him toward the group. An older man stepped forward, his weathered face stern but his eyes kind. He wore his gray-streaked hair in 2 long braids and carried himself with unmistakable authority. Clara spoke to the man in Cheyenne, gesturing to Vincent. The man listened, then studied Vincent carefully before speaking to Clara in return. "This is Chief Red Hawk," Clara explained in English. "He leads what remains of our band. I found them camped near the border. When I told them my story, told them about you and what you did, Red Hawk insisted on coming to meet you himself." Red Hawk spoke again, his voice deep and measured. Clara translated. "He says that a man who would give his last food to a stranger, knowing he might die of hunger himself, is a man of rare honor. He says such men are few in any tribe or nation." Vincent felt his face flush. "I only did what anyone decent would do." Clara translated, and Red Hawk actually smiled slightly. He responded, and Clara said, "Red Hawk says most men talk about what they would do. Few actually do it when the cost is real. He says you are either very brave or very foolish, but either way, you saved my life, and therefore the Cheyenne are in your debt." "There is no debt," Vincent said firmly. "I wanted Clara to live. That was payment enough." The conversation continued, with Red Hawk asking questions about Vincent's land, his intentions, and his past. Vincent answered honestly, keeping nothing back. He explained his time in the war, his years of drifting, his decision to settle in this valley because it was beautiful and remote. Finally, Red Hawk spoke at length, his tone shifting from questioning to decisive. Clara's eyes widened as she listened. "What is he saying?" Vincent asked. Clara turned to him, her expression caught between joy and disbelief. "Red Hawk says his people need a safe place to stay. The army is pushing harder every year, trying to force all Cheyenne onto reservations. He says the land around your cabin could hide his band, at least through the summer, maybe longer. There is water, game, and it is remote enough that soldiers rarely patrol here. He wants to camp on my land." "Yes, but there is more." Clara paused, clearly trying to find the right words. "In Cheyenne tradition, when someone saves your life, you become tied to them. I told Red Hawk that I loved you, that I wanted to stay with you. He says if you will shelter his people, protect them if soldiers come, and allow me to remain with you, then he will bless our union in Cheyenne tradition. We would be married in the eyes of my people." Vincent's heart hammered in his chest. He looked at Clara, this woman who had stumbled into his life in a snowstorm and changed everything. "Do you want that, to stay with me permanently?" "I told you I would come back. I meant it. I found my people, Vincent, but I also found something else. I found you. I do not want to choose between you. With Red Hawk's blessing, I would not have to." Vincent turned to Red Hawk and spoke directly to him, even though he knew the chief understood little English. "I would be honored to have your people camp on this land. It is not really mine anyway. The land belongs to itself. I just live on it. And I love Clara more than I thought I could love anyone. If she will have me, I want to marry her in whatever tradition will make her happy." Clara translated, her voice shaking with emotion. Red Hawk listened, then nodded once firmly. He spoke again, and this time Clara's eyes filled with tears. He says you are welcome among the Cheyenne as a friend and brother. He says we will be married tomorrow at sunset, and the tribe will witness our union. He says any children we have will be Cheyenne, and they will always have a place among the people. Vincent pulled Clara close, holding her tight. Tell him yes. Tell him thank you. Tell him I will do everything I can to help keep his people safe. That evening, the Cheyenne made camp in the valley near Vincent's cabin. They set up their lodges with practiced efficiency, and Vincent watched in fascination as the small village took shape. Children ran between the lodges playing games, women started cooking fires, and men tended to the horses. Clara brought Vincent through the camp, introducing him to families. Despite the language barrier, the people were kind, offering him food and welcoming him with gestures and smiles. He met warriors who eyed him cautiously but respectfully, women who studied him with frank curiosity, and children who stared at his pale skin and light brown hair with amazement. One elderly woman, her face deeply lined with age, took Vincent's hands in hers and spoke at length. Clara listened, then translated with obvious emotion. This is gentle mourning. She is the eldest of our band, over 80 winters old. She says she has seen much sorrow in her life, many deaths, much pain, but she says hope comes from unexpected places. She says a white man with a good heart is as rare as a white buffalo and just as sacred. She gives us her blessing. Vincent squeezed the old woman's hands gently. Tell her I am honored. Tell her I will try to deserve that blessing. That night, Vincent and Clara sat together outside his cabin, watching the fires of the Cheyenne camp flicker in the darkness. The sounds of conversation and laughter drifted on the night air, and for the first time in years, Vincent felt like he was part of something larger than himself. Are you scared? Clara asked softly. Of what? All of this. Marrying me, having my people here, the danger it could bring if soldiers find us. Vincent thought about it seriously before answering. I am scared of losing you. Everything else we will figure out together. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. I love you, Vincent Fletcher. I think I started loving you that first week when you gave me the last of your coffee and pretended you did not even like it. Vincent laughed quietly. I was not very subtle about that, was I? No, but it was sweet. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. The next day was a whirlwind of activity. The Cheyenne women took Clara away early in the morning, and Vincent did not see her again until evening. In the meantime, several of the men approached him about helping expand his cabin into a proper house. Through a combination of gestures, drawings in the dirt, and a few words of English from a younger man named Swift Arrow, who had learned some of the language at a mission school, they communicated their plan. The Cheyenne would help Vincent build a real home, large enough for a family, in exchange for permission to camp on his land and his protection if trouble came. Vincent agreed immediately, and the work began. The Cheyenne were skilled builders, and Vincent learned techniques he had never seen before. They showed him how to select the right trees, how to cure wood quickly, and how to construct joints that would hold for generations. By mid-afternoon, the frame of an additional room was already taking shape. As the sun began to descend toward the western mountains, the work stopped. Red Hawk emerged from his lodge wearing ceremonial clothing decorated with intricate beadwork and carrying a long pipe. The tribe gathered in a clearing, forming a large circle. Swift Arrow appeared at Vincent's side. Time for wedding. You come now. Vincent's mouth went dry with nervousness, but he followed Swift Arrow to the circle's edge. The young man pointed to a spot where Vincent should stand, facing east. Vincent took his position, very aware of 40 pairs of eyes watching him. Then Clara emerged from one of the lodges, and Vincent forgot to breathe. She wore a dress of soft deerskin, white as fresh snow, decorated with elaborate beadwork in patterns of blue and red. Her long dark hair hung loose down her back, with small white feathers woven into it. Her amber eyes found his across the circle, and she smiled, a smile so full of love and happiness that Vincent felt his eyes burn with tears. Clara walked to the circle and took her place facing Vincent, with Red Hawk standing between them. The chief began to speak, his voice carrying across the gathered tribe. Though Vincent could not understand the words, he felt their power, their weight. Swift Arrow stood near Vincent, translating quietly. Red Hawk speaks of the old ways when Cheyenne and white man lived in peace. He speaks of honor, of courage, of sacrifice. He tells the story of how you saved Clara's life, how you gave her your food knowing you might starve. He says this is the mark of a true man, a true warrior, regardless of the color of his skin. Red Hawk spoke for several minutes, then took a length of soft rope and gestured for Vincent and Clara to extend their hands. When they did, he bound their wrists together loosely, speaking as he did. He binds your lives together, Swift Arrow translated. He says you are now one spirit in two bodies. Where one goes, the other follows. What one suffers, the other shares. What one celebrates, the other joins. You are married in the eyes of the Cheyenne people, now and forever. Red Hawk produced a ceremonial knife and made a tiny cut on Clara's palm, then on Vincent's. He pressed their palms together, letting their blood mix. Your blood is now shared blood, Swift Arrow said. Your children will carry both your spirits. Your family is sacred. Red Hawk then unwrapped their hands and spoke a final blessing before stepping back. Clara immediately closed the distance between them and kissed Vincent as the tribe erupted in celebration, voices raised in traditional songs and cries of joy. "We are married," Clara whispered against his lips. "You are my husband." "And you are my wife," Vincent replied, the words feeling both strange and perfectly right. The celebration lasted well into the night. There was food, more than Vincent had seen in months as the Cheyenne had hunted successfully on their journey south. There was music, with drums and flutes creating rhythms that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the earth itself. There was dancing, and though Vincent was clumsy and uncertain, Clara pulled him into the circle and taught him the basic steps, both of them laughing as he stumbled. Late in the night, after the children had been put to bed and the older members of the tribe had retired to their lodges, Vincent and Clara slipped away to his cabin. Someone, probably the women who had prepared Clara for the ceremony, had transformed the interior. Fresh pine boughs covered the floor, filling the space with their clean scent. The bed had been made with soft furs and blankets. Candles burned in careful positions, filling the room with gentle light. "They prepared this for us," Clara said softly, looking around with wonder. "A wedding gift." Vincent closed the door behind them, suddenly nervous despite the fact that they had already been intimate. Something felt different now, more significant. Clara turned to face him, reaching up to untie the thongs that held her ceremonial dress closed. "Are you happy, my husband?" Vincent crossed to her and stilled her hands with his own. "I am happier than I ever thought possible. I went from a lonely man facing a hard winter to a married man with a wife and a tribe camping in his valley. It feels like a dream. If it is a dream, we are both having it." Clara smiled up at him. "Make love to me, Vincent, as my husband, as my partner, as the man I choose to spend my life with." They undressed each other slowly in the candlelight, exploring each other's bodies with new reverence. When they finally came together on the soft furs, it was with a tenderness and passion that left them both shaking. Afterward, they lay tangled together, listening to the night sounds outside. "What happens now?" Vincent asked quietly, stroking Clara's hair. Now we build a life, together. With my people nearby, at least for a while. You teach me more about your world and I teach you more about mine. We find a way to bridge both. What if soldiers come? Clara tensed slightly in his arms. Then we will face that when it happens. Red Hawk chose this place because it is remote. We have time. Maybe months, maybe longer. We will use that time well. Vincent held her closer. I will protect you. I will protect them, whatever it takes. I know. That is why Red Hawk trusts you. That is why I love you. They fell asleep in each other's arms, husband and wife, bound by both necessity and choice, building something fragile and precious in a world that often destroyed such things. The summer months that followed were among the happiest of Vincent's life. True to their word, the Cheyenne men helped him build his house. What had started as a simple cabin grew into a proper two-room home with a real wooden floor, glass windows, and a stone chimney. The work was hard, but it was joyful, filled with laughter and growing friendship. Vincent learned more Cheyenne words each day, and several of the younger tribe members practiced their English with him. Swift Arrow became a particular friend, the young man often eating dinner with Vincent and Clara and sharing stories of his experiences at the mission school. I learned their language, Swift Arrow told Vincent one evening, because I thought it would help me understand them, help me know why they hate us so much. Did it work? Vincent asked. Swift Arrow shook his head sadly. I learned their words, but I never understood their hearts. They see us as obstacles, not as people. They want our land, and they do not care what happens to us when they take it. Vincent had no answer for that. He had seen enough of the world to know Swift Arrow spoke truth, but there were lighter moments too. Clara taught Vincent how to recognize medicinal plants, and together they gathered herbs that the tribe needed. Gentle Morning, the elderly woman, seemed to adopt Vincent as a sort of grandson, often beckoning him to her fire to share meals or teach him traditional stories through Clara's translation. The children of the tribe, once they got over their initial shyness, followed Vincent around constantly. They found his pale skin endlessly fascinating and loved to press their small brown hands against his forearm to see the contrast. Vincent, who had always liked children, often carved small toys for them or let them ride on his shoulders. One day in late July, Vincent was fishing in the stream that ran through the valley when Red Hawk approached. The chief gestured that he wanted to talk, and they sat together on the bank while Vincent's line drifted in the current. Red Hawk spoke at length, his weathered face serious. Clara, who had followed at a distance, came forward to translate. Red Hawk wants to tell you something important, she said, settling beside them. He says he has been watching you these months. He has seen how you treat the people with respect, how you listen when the elders speak, how you play with the children and help the young men and honor the women. He says he was not certain at first if your kindness to me was real or if it was something you did hoping for reward. But now he knows the truth. Clara paused, emotion thick in her voice. He says you have a good spirit. He says he was wrong to doubt. He says he wants to adopt you into the tribe, make you officially Cheyenne through ceremony. If you accept, you would not just be Clara's husband. You would be a true member of the band with all the rights and responsibilities that carries. Vincent looked at Red Hawk, seeing the sincerity in the chief's eyes. What would that mean exactly? It would mean you are one of us, Clara explained. You would fight for the tribe if needed, hunt for us, share all you have, but it also means we would do the same for you. You would never be alone again. You would have brothers, sisters, parents, children beyond just those we might have together. You would belong. Vincent felt something catch in his throat. Belonging. It was something he had been searching for since his parents died, through all his years of drifting and loneliness. And now it was being offered to him by people who had every reason to distrust white men. "Tell Red Hawk I would be deeply honored," Vincent said, looking directly at the chief. "Tell him I accept with my whole heart." Clara translated, and Red Hawk's stern face broke into a broad smile. He stood and clasped Vincent's forearm in a warrior's greeting, speaking rapidly. "He says the ceremony will be in 3 days," Clara said, her own face glowing with happiness. "He says you are already his son-in-law, but soon you will also be his son. He is pleased." The adoption ceremony was more elaborate than the wedding had been. Vincent had to fast for a full day beforehand and spend the night alone in the forest, a traditional vision quest that was part of the adoption ritual. He sat under the stars, listening to the night sounds of the forest, thinking about the strange path his life had taken. In the morning, he returned to camp and was led to a sweat lodge the men had built specifically for the ceremony. Inside, in the steaming darkness, Red Hawk and the other men of the tribe performed rituals and prayers. Vincent, though he understood few of the words, felt the power of the experience in his bones. When they finally emerged, Vincent was given new clothes, traditional Cheyenne clothing made by the women of the tribe. They dressed him in buckskin pants and a shirt decorated with quillwork, and Gentle Morning herself placed a single eagle feather in his hair. Through Clara, Red Hawk explained that Vincent was being given a Cheyenne name, Man Who Shares Winter. It referred to his generosity during those hard months when he had given Clara everything he had. Vincent wore the name with pride. As summer faded into autumn, Vincent and Clara settled into married life. She was pregnant by September, a fact that filled Vincent with equal parts joy and terror. He worked constantly on the house, making sure it would be warm and safe for the coming child. The Cheyenne women assured Clara that everything was progressing normally, and Gentle Morning in particular took charge of preparing for the birth. Red Hawk and the tribe began preparing to move before winter set in. It was too dangerous to stay in one place for too long, and the valley, while remote, was not hidden enough for winter when smoke from fires could be seen for miles. "We will go north," Red Hawk told Vincent through Clara. "Toward the mountains. There are places we can hide, valleys no white man knows. We will return in the spring." "Will you be safe?" Vincent asked. Red Hawk's expression was grim. "Safe is a word that has little meaning anymore for the Cheyenne, but we will survive. We are good at surviving." Before the tribe left, there was much preparation. The Cheyenne helped Vincent and Clara stockpile food for the winter, far more than 2 people needed. They hunted together one last time, and Vincent was honored to ride alongside Swift Arrow and the other warriors. When they brought down an elk, Vincent was given first choice of the meat, a sign of his acceptance as a member of the tribe. The morning the Cheyenne broke camp was bittersweet. Vincent and Clara stood watching as the lodges came down and the bundles were packed onto horses. People Vincent had come to think of as family, as brothers and sisters, were leaving, and there was no guarantee he would ever see them again. Red Hawk clasped Vincent's arm one final time. Through Clara, he said, "You are Cheyenne now, Man Who Shares Winter. That does not change when we leave. When your child is born, send word if you can. I want to know I have a grandchild in the world." "I will," Vincent promised. "And if you need anything, ever come back. This valley will always be open to you and your people." Swift Arrow approached next, embracing Vincent like a brother. "You are a good man, Vincent Fletcher. I am proud to know you. Stay safe, my friend. All of you." Gentle Morning came last, moving slowly with her great age. She took Vincent's face in her wrinkled hands and spoke at length, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Clara translated, her own voice breaking. "She says she did not think she would live to see such a thing. A white man and a Cheyenne woman building a life together in peace. She says it gives her hope that maybe, someday, others will find the same path. She blesses you and your coming child. She says she will pray for you every day. Vincent knelt before the old woman and took her hands gently. Thank you for accepting me, for teaching me, for showing me kindness I did not deserve. Clara translated, and gentle mourning patted his cheek before turning to walk toward her horse. The tribe moved out slowly, a long line of people and horses heading north through the valley. Vincent and Clara stood watching until the last member disappeared over the ridge. Then they were alone again, just as they had been at the start, except now Clara's belly was swelling with new life, and Vincent wore a single eagle feather in his hair. Winter came early that year, snow falling in late October. But Vincent's expanded house was snug and warm, and their supplies were more than adequate. The months passed peacefully, with Vincent and Clara existing in their own small world, cut off from the outside by snow and distance. Clara's pregnancy progressed without complication, though as her time drew near, Vincent grew increasingly nervous. He had no experience with childbirth, and though Clara assured him that women had been having babies since the beginning of time, he worried constantly. What if something goes wrong? He asked one evening in late February, watching Clara knit a small blanket by the fire. Then you will help me, and we will figure it out together, Clara said calmly. Women have babies alone all the time, Vincent. I am strong. The baby is strong, we will be fine. But gentle mourning is not here. The other women are not here. What if you need help I cannot give? Clara set down her knitting and reached for his hand. Vincent, I love that you worry. It shows you care. But you need to trust me. Trust us. This baby is half you, half me. It will be strong like its father and stubborn like its mother. It will come when it is ready, and we will welcome it into the world. Vincent squeezed her hand, trying to absorb some of her confidence. The baby came on a cold morning in early March 1878, just as the first hints of spring began to show in the valley. Clara woke Vincent before dawn, her face calm despite the contractions he could see tightening her belly. It is time, she said simply. The next several hours were the longest and most terrifying of Vincent's life. He helped Clara as best he could, remembering instructions gentle mourning had made sure to give him before the tribe left. He boiled water, gathered clean cloths, and held Clara's hand through the contractions. Clara was incredibly strong, barely making a sound even when Vincent could tell the pain was intense. She walked, squatted, and moved through the positions her body demanded, letting instinct guide her. Finally, as the sun reached its zenith, Clara gave a deep grunt and bore down one final time. Vincent, positioned to catch the baby as Clara had instructed, found himself holding a tiny, slippery, squalling infant. It is a boy, Vincent said, his voice choked with emotion. Clara, we have a son. Clara, exhausted but smiling, held out her arms. Vincent placed the baby against her chest, and they both stared in wonder at the tiny person they had created. The boy had a shock of dark hair and amber eyes that would clearly be his mother's color. His skin was somewhere between Vincent's paleness and Clara's warm brown, a perfect blend of both parents. He is beautiful, Clara whispered, tears streaming down her face. He is perfect, Vincent agreed, kissing both Clara and his son. They named the boy Thomas, after Vincent's father, with the Cheyenne name Flying Hawk, given to him in a ceremony only the three of them witnessed, with Vincent speaking the words Red Hawk had taught him for just this purpose. Spring arrived fully, and with it came the challenge of caring for an infant while managing the homestead. Vincent had never worked so hard in his life, trying to maintain their home, hunt and fish for food, plant a garden and help Clara with their son. But he had also never been happier. Thomas was a healthy baby, strong and alert. He nursed well, slept reasonably, and seemed fascinated by the world around him. Vincent spent hours just watching his son, marveling at the tiny fingers and toes, the little expressions that crossed the baby's face. In late April, Vincent was working in his garden when he heard horses approaching. His hand went instinctively to the rifle he now kept nearby, but then he recognized the riders and relaxed. It was Swift Arrow and two other young Cheyenne men. "My friend," Swift Arrow called out, sliding off his horse. "Red Hawk sent us to check on you, to see if Clara had the baby." Vincent grinned broadly. "Come inside. Meet my son." The three men entered the cabin where Clara sat nursing Thomas. She looked up with a smile, and Swift Arrow immediately knelt beside her to look at the baby. "A son," he said softly. "Red Hawk will be pleased. He has a grandson." "How is the tribe?" Clara asked. "Is everyone safe?" Swift Arrow's expression grew somber. "We are safe for now. Hiding in the mountains. But the army is pushing harder. There was a battle to the west. Many Cheyenne died trying to return to their homeland. It is getting harder to find places where we can live in peace." Vincent felt anger rise in his chest. "You are welcome here, always. If Red Hawk wants to bring the tribe back, we have room." "It may come to that," Swift Arrow admitted. "But not yet. Red Hawk says we must stay moving, stay hidden. It is harder with the old ones and the children, but it is better than the reservation." The young men stayed for 2 days, hunting with Vincent and spending time with Clara and the baby. When they left, they carried a message from Vincent and Clara for Red Hawk, telling him about his grandson and inviting him to visit when it was safe. Summer passed peacefully. Thomas grew rapidly, becoming a chubby, happy baby who loved to be outside. Vincent often worked with his son strapped to his back in a traditional cradle board that Clara had made, and more than once he found himself talking to the baby as if he could understand, explaining what he was doing and why. In August, the Cheyenne returned. Vincent spotted the dust of their approach and felt his heart lift. Clara, with Thomas in her arms, came to stand beside him as the tribe rode into the valley, but something was different. The band was larger now, perhaps 60 people instead of the 40 who had left. Many of the new faces looked haggard and worn, and when Red Hawk dismounted, Vincent saw that the chief moved stiffly, favoring his left side. "What happened?" Clara asked urgently, speaking in Cheyenne as she embraced Red Hawk carefully. The chief's face was grim as he explained, and even without translation, Vincent could tell the news was bad. When Red Hawk finished, Clara turned to Vincent with tears in her eyes. There was a raid. Army soldiers attacked a Cheyenne camp to the west, killed many people. These are the survivors. Red Hawk took them in, but now he has too many people to hide easily. He wants to know if they can stay here through the winter. All of them. Vincent looked at the assembled people, seeing the fear and exhaustion in their faces. Children clung to their mothers. Old people slumped with weariness. Warriors stood with the bearing of defeated men. "Of course they can stay," Vincent said firmly. "We will make room. We will figure it out together." Relief washed over Red Hawk's face as Clara translated. He reached out and clasped Vincent's shoulder, speaking with obvious emotion. "He says you are proof that not all white men are the same," Clara said. "He says you give him hope." That evening, as the expanded tribe made camp, Red Hawk finally met his grandson. The stern chief's face softened completely as he held little Thomas, speaking to the baby in Cheyenne and touching his tiny features with gentle fingers. "He looks like Clara," Red Hawk said through her translation. "But he has your chin, I think. He will be a strong man. I hope he lives in a world where his heritage is a blessing, not a burden," Vincent said quietly. Red Hawk's eyes met his. "That is my hope too, but I fear we are wishing for something that will not come to pass." The arrival of the larger band meant significant changes. Vincent's valley, while large, was now crowded. The Cheyennes spread out, making multiple small camps to reduce the appearance of a large settlement. They hunted carefully, not wanting to deplete the game. Everyone worked to gather and store food for winter. Vincent found himself in an unexpected position of leadership. While Red Hawk remained the chief of the Cheyenne, the land was technically Vincent's homestead, filed legally with the territorial government. That gave them some small protection, though Vincent knew it would not stop the army if they truly wanted to remove the Cheyenne. Through late summer and into fall, they built a fragile peace. The tribe helped Vincent expand his house again, adding a third room for Thomas. In exchange, Vincent shared everything he had and used what little money he had saved to buy supplies in the nearest town, claiming he was planning to start a larger ranch and needed extra provisions. The town, a small settlement called Big Timber, was 3 days' ride from the valley. Vincent made the trip once a month, always nervous that someone would question his need for so many supplies. But his story seemed believable, and he was careful not to buy so much at once that it raised suspicion. In September, Vincent was preparing for another supply run when Swift Arrow approached him. "Let me come with you," the young man said. "You should not ride alone. It is dangerous." "It is more dangerous if people see me with a Cheyenne," Vincent replied. "Questions will be asked. Then I will stay out of sight, but I will follow at a distance and make sure you return safely." Red Hawk agrees. "You are too valuable to lose, my brother." Vincent was touched by the concern. "All right, but stay well back. I do not want anyone from town following us home." The trip went smoothly, though Vincent noticed that people in Big Timber seemed tense. Talk in the general store centered on recent Indian troubles and army movements. Vincent kept his head down, made his purchases, and left as quickly as possible. On the ride back, Swift Arrow rode beside him openly once they were well away from town. "It is getting worse," Swift Arrow said. "You heard them talking. The army is pushing to get all Cheyenne onto reservations. They will not stop until they have achieved that goal. Then we will keep you hidden as long as we can. Vincent, what you are doing for us, it could get you killed or arrested. You know this, yes, I know." "Then why? Why risk everything?" Vincent thought about his answer carefully. "Because Clara is my wife. Because Thomas is my son. Because Red Hawk is my father now, and you are my brother. Because the people in that camp are my family. You do not abandon family, no matter the cost." Swift Arrow was silent for a long moment. "You are a better man than most, Vincent Fletcher. I am just a man doing what he thinks is right." Winter came, and suddenly Vincent found himself helping to feed and shelter 60 people instead of just his own small family. It was a monumental task, and there were times when he lay awake at night wondering if they would all starve before spring. But the Cheyenne were resourceful. The hunters ranged far, bringing back deer and elk. The women preserved every scrap of food with techniques passed down through generations. The children learned not to waste anything. Everyone contributed what they could. Vincent used the last of his savings to buy flour and beans from Big Timber, telling the shopkeeper he was feeding his ranch hands through the winter. The lie weighed on him, but the alternative was starvation for people he loved. Clara was his anchor through it all. She organized the women to help with food preparation and preservation. She made sure Thomas stayed healthy and warm. She soothed Vincent's fears when they threatened to overwhelm him. "We will make it through," she told him on a particularly difficult night in January when the supplies looked dangerously low and the snow showed no signs of stopping. "We have each other. We have our family. That is enough." "What if it is not?" Vincent asked, voicing the fear that kept him awake. "What if I cannot provide enough? What if people die because I brought them here? Clara took his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Vincent, these people were dying out there, running, starving, being hunted. You gave them a chance to survive with dignity. Whatever happens, that matters. You matter. Vincent pulled her close, drawing strength from her certainty. They made it through winter, though just barely. By the time spring arrived in March 1879, everyone was thin and tired. But they had survived together, and that created a bond stronger than blood. Thomas celebrated his first birthday with the entire tribe present. The Cheyenne held a naming ceremony, officially giving him his place among the people. Thomas, now walking and beginning to talk, toddled between the lodges fearlessly. The darling of everyone in camp, in April, disaster struck. A patrol of Army soldiers happened through the valley, and though most of the Cheyenne managed to hide, the soldiers saw enough to know that someone was camping on Vincent's land. 2 soldiers rode up to Vincent's house, while the others waited at a distance. Vincent met them on his porch, Clara and Thomas safely inside. "Morning," Vincent said calmly, though his heart hammered in his chest. "Good morning," the officer replied, a lieutenant with sharp eyes and a harder expression. "I am Lieutenant Carson. We are on patrol from Fort Ellis." "You are Vincent Fletcher." "I am." "You have quite a lot of activity on your land, Mr. Fletcher. Camps, many people." Care to explain? Vincent had prepared for this moment, rehearsing his story. "I have hired some ranch hands, planning to expand my operation, run more cattle come summer." "Is that so?" Lieutenant Carson's eyes swept the valley, clearly noting details Vincent could not hide. "Seems like unusual-looking ranch hands to me. I hire whoever is willing to work. Hard to find good help this far from town." The lieutenant's expression hardened. "Mr. Fletcher, I am going to be direct with you. I have reports of Cheyenne in this area. Cheyenne who refuse to go to the reservation. If you are harboring them, that is a federal crime." "I am not harboring anyone, Lieutenant. These are my employees on my legally filed homestead." "Then you would not mind if we looked around." Vincent's blood ran cold, but he kept his expression neutral. "Actually, Lieutenant, I would mind. This is private property, and unless you have a warrant, I have the right to refuse your search." The 2 men stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Lieutenant Carson said, "We will be watching, Mr. Fletcher. If we find proof you are helping hostile Indians, we will be back with that warrant, and you will face serious consequences." "I understand, Lieutenant. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do." The soldiers left, but Vincent knew they were far from safe. That evening he met with Red Hawk and the tribal elders to discuss what to do. "We must leave," Red Hawk said through Clara's translation. "We have put you in too much danger. If they come back, they will arrest you or worse." "Where will you go?" Vincent asked. "The army is everywhere now. There is nowhere safe." "There is never truly safe for us anymore," Red Hawk said sadly. "But we cannot let you sacrifice yourself. You have a wife, a son. They need you." The meeting went late into the night. Finally, a plan was formed. The tribe would split into smaller groups, less noticeable. They would range across a wider area but would stay within a day's ride of Vincent's Valley. That way, they could scatter if soldiers came but could regroup if needed. It was not a perfect solution, but it was the best they had. Over the next week, the Cheyenne broke camp and dispersed. Red Hawk, Gentle Morning, Swift Arrow, and a few others stayed closest to Vincent's Valley, camping in hidden spots in the mountains. The rest spread out, staying mobile, using skills honed over generations of survival. Vincent, Clara, and Thomas were left alone again, though now soldiers periodically patrolled through the valley. Vincent went about his business, working his land as if nothing was wrong, but the tension was constant. In June, Clara told Vincent she was pregnant again. The news filled him with joy and fear in equal measure. Another child was a blessing, but the world they were bringing that child into seemed to grow more dangerous every day. Summer passed with no major incidents, though Vincent heard troubling news whenever he went to Big Timber for supplies. The army was cracking down hard on any Cheyenne not on the reservation. There had been several skirmishes, and the prevailing attitude in town was that all Indians should be removed or eliminated. Vincent kept his mouth shut and his opinions to himself, knowing that any defense of the Cheyenne would mark him as a sympathizer and bring more scrutiny. In August, Swift Arrow appeared at Vincent's door in the middle of the night, breathless and wild-eyed. "Soldiers," he gasped, "coming at dawn." Someone in town told them about suspicious activity in this valley. "They are bringing a full patrol to search everything." Vincent felt ice flood his veins. "How many?" 20 men, maybe more. "They will find the camps. They will find our people." "Not if there is nothing to find." Vincent turned to Clara. "Wake Thomas. Pack essential things only. We need to warn everyone." The next hours were a frantic race against time. Vincent, Clara, Swift Arrow, and several other Cheyenne men rode through the darkness, warning the scattered camps. By the time the sun began to rise, every trace of Cheyenne presence had been erased. The people had melted into the mountains, taking everything with them. Vincent returned home just as the soldiers arrived. This time there were indeed more than 20, led by a hard-faced captain. "Vincent Fletcher," the captain demanded. "That is me. I am Captain Morris. We have reports of illegal Indian activity on your property. We are going to search every inch of this land. If we find anything, you will be arrested for harboring hostiles." Vincent met the captain's eyes steadily. "Search all you want, Captain. You will not find anything because there is nothing to find." The soldiers spent the entire day combing through Vincent's valley. They found his house, his garden, his small barn. They found his tools and supplies. They found absolutely no evidence of Cheyenne presence, because there was none to find. By evening, Captain Morris stood on Vincent's porch, frustrated and suspicious. "You are either very lucky or very clever, Mr. Fletcher," the captain said coldly. "I am just a man trying to make a life for his family, Captain, nothing more. We will be watching. Count on it." After the soldiers left, Vincent collapsed in a chair, shaking with delayed fear. Clara held him while Thomas, confused by the tension, clung to his mother. "That was too close," Vincent said. "Next time we might not be so lucky." "So what do we do?" Vincent looked at his wife and son, then out at the valley he had made his home. "We keep going. We keep surviving. We keep protecting our family, all of our family. It is all we can do." That evening, Swift Arrow returned with news that everyone had scattered successfully and would stay away for now. Red Hawk sent a message thanking Vincent for the warning and promising to keep his people safe. Autumn arrived, and Clara's pregnancy progressed. The Cheyenne remained scattered and hidden, occasionally sending messengers to check on Vincent and Clara. The army patrols continued, though less frequently as winter approached. In November, Clara gave birth to their second child, another boy. They named him Daniel, with the Cheyenne name Running Deer. Like his older brother, Daniel was healthy and perfect, a blend of both his parents' bloodlines. Winter 1879 was hard, made harder by the isolation and constant fear. Vincent could not buy as many supplies as before without raising suspicion, so he and Clara had to be incredibly careful with their resources. Occasionally, in the dark of night, a Cheyenne hunter would leave meat at their door, a silent gift from people who had little to spare themselves. Spring 1880 brought a thaw in more than just the weather. The army, having found no evidence of Cheyenne in Vincent's valley, turned their attention elsewhere. The patrols stopped, and slowly, cautiously, the scattered tribe began to regroup. Red Hawk, now visibly aged by the stress of the past year, met with Vincent in May. "We cannot keep living like this," the chief said through Clara. "My people are exhausted. The children are suffering. The old ones are dying. We need to make a decision." "What kind of decision?" Vincent asked, though he feared he knew. "Some want to go to the reservation. They think it is better to live in captivity than to die running. Others want to keep fighting, keep hiding. The tribe is dividing." Vincent felt the weight of that statement. "What do you want, Red Hawk?" The old chief looked at his grandson Thomas, now 2 years old and playing nearby, and at baby Daniel in Clara's arms. "I want my grandchildren to grow up free. I want them to know their heritage with pride, not shame. But I am old and I am tired. I do not know if that dream is possible anymore." "It is possible," Clara said firmly. "Right here. Vincent's land is legal. Thomas and Daniel are his sons. No one can take that away. Some of the people could claim to work for us. It would not be traditional Cheyenne life, but it would be freedom of a sort." Red Hawk considered this. "You would do this, claim my people as your workers." "I would claim them as family," Vincent corrected. "Which is what they are." Over the next months, a new arrangement took shape. Red Hawk and about 15 Cheyenne, including Swift Arrow and Gentle Morning, officially became part of Vincent's homestead. They built cabins nearby and lived openly, working the land alongside Vincent. To anyone who asked, they were ranch workers and servants, though in private, they were family and equals. The rest of the tribe, those who could not or would not take on the pretense of working for a white rancher, slowly made their way to the reservation. It was a heartbreaking division, but it was necessary for survival. The arrangement was not perfect. The Cheyenne who stayed had to hide aspects of their culture, had to bow and scrape when strangers came around, had to endure being treated as lesser. But they were alive and they were together, and they could practice their traditions in private. Vincent and Clara's family continued to grow. In 1882, they had a daughter, Mary, with the Cheyenne name Bright Star. In 1884, another son, Joseph, called Strong Bear. Their house expanded into a sprawling ranch house, and their land became a working ranch that actually raised cattle and horses. The children grew up speaking both English and Cheyenne, learning both cultures. Thomas and Daniel were accepted in Big Timber because they were Vincent Fletcher's sons, but they also knew the stories and traditions of their mother's people. Mary and Joseph would follow the same path. Swift Arrow married a young Cheyenne woman named Morning Dove, and they built a cabin near Vincent's house. Red Hawk lived to see 4 more grandchildren born before passing peacefully in his sleep in 1885, at nearly 70 years old. Gentle Morning followed him just months later. Vincent grieved for them both, these people who had welcomed him and made him truly family. But he also felt gratitude for the years they had shared and the legacy they had left. By 1890, Vincent was 47 years old. His hair had gone gray at the temples, and his face was weathered by years of hard work and western sun. But he was happy, truly happy, in a way he had never imagined possible that long-ago day when he found a dying woman in the snow. Clara, at 43, was still beautiful, her amber eyes as bright as ever. She moved between both worlds gracefully, teaching her children and the younger Cheyenne to do the same. Their 4 children were growing into remarkable young people. Thomas, at 12, was already helping run the ranch. Daniel, at 10, showed talent for working with horses. Mary, at 8, had her grandmother's gift for medicine and plants. And Joseph, at 6, was the one most interested in the traditional Cheyenne ways, always begging Swift Arrow to tell him stories of the old times. One evening in late summer, Vincent sat on his porch watching the sun set over the valley. Clara came out and settled beside him, taking his hand. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "All of this. The hardship, the danger, the complications." Vincent turned to look at her, this woman who had changed his entire life. "Not for 1 second. You and our children, the family we built here, both by blood and by choice, this is the best thing I have ever done. The only thing that truly mattered." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Vincent Fletcher, man who shares winter, my husband, my partner, the father of my children. I love you, Clara Fletcher, now and forever." They sat together as the stars began to emerge, listening to the sounds of their children playing in the yard and swift arrows, families singing traditional songs near their fire. It was not the life either of them had expected, but it was theirs, built from sacrifice and love and determination. In the years that followed, the Fletcher Ranch became known throughout Montana Territory as a place of quiet dignity and hard work. Vincent never advertised the fact that his ranch hands were Cheyenne, but he never hid it either. Some neighbors disapproved, but most respected Vincent's success and left him alone. The children continued to grow. Thomas eventually married a young woman from Big Timber and brought her to live on the ranch. She was nervous about the Cheyenne presence at first, but Clara won her over with kindness and wisdom. Daniel followed in his father's footsteps, focusing on expanding the cattle operation. Mary became known in the region as a healer, combining Western medicine with traditional Cheyenne knowledge. Joseph, true to his childhood interests, became a keeper of stories and traditions, ensuring that nothing was lost to the next generation. Vincent and Clara had the joy of seeing their grandchildren born, healthy babies who represented the blending of two worlds. They taught these grandchildren the same lessons they had taught their own children: that all people deserve dignity, that heritage is something to treasure, that love and family transcend bloodlines and culture. Swift Arrow remained Vincent's closest friend until the end, the two men inseparable despite the years. Mourning, Dove and Clara became like sisters, raising their children together and supporting each other through all of life's challenges. In 1895, Montana achieved statehood, and the Fletcher Ranch was recognized officially as one of the pioneer homesteads. Vincent, now 52, attended the ceremonies in Helena, representing the hard work and determination of all Montana settlers. He said nothing about the Cheyenne family that made his success possible, knowing that some truths were still too dangerous to speak aloud, but he thought of them constantly. As Vincent grew older, he often reflected on that November day in 1877 when Clara had stumbled into his life. If he had made a different choice, if he had turned away from her suffering, his entire life would have been different. Empty, lonely, meaningless. Instead, because of one moment of compassion, he had built something extraordinary, a family that spanned cultures, a legacy of love and acceptance. A proof, however small, that people from different worlds could find common ground. In 1900, as the new century dawned, Vincent and Clara celebrated their 22nd wedding anniversary. Their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch, now a sprawling operation that employed over 30 people, many of them Cheyenne or mixed heritage. Thomas had become the primary manager of the ranch operations. Daniel oversaw the livestock. Mary ran a small clinic from her home, treating anyone who came to her regardless of their ability to pay. Joseph, now 16, was preparing to attend university, where he planned to study law and advocate for Native American rights. Vincent looked around at the gathering, at the life he and Clara had built, and felt profound satisfaction. They had started with nothing but a willingness to help a stranger in need. They had built an empire of love from that single act. "What are you thinking?" Clara asked, coming to stand beside him as they watched their family celebrate. "I am thinking that I am the luckiest man who ever lived," Vincent replied, pulling her close. "I am thinking that giving you my winter supplies was the best decision I ever made." Clara laughed, the sound still as beautiful to him as it had been over 20 years ago. "You gave me more than supplies, Vincent. You gave me life, hope, a future. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Vincent corrected, "and we built something that will outlast both of us." Vincent Fletcher lived to the age of 71, passing away peacefully in 1914, with Clara beside him and his children surrounding his bed. His last words were a mixture of English and Cheyenne, thanking Clara for the life they had shared and asking his children to honor both sides of their heritage. Clara lived another 5 years, spending her final time teaching her grandchildren and great-grandchildren the stories and traditions of the Cheyenne people. She passed in 1919 and was buried beside Vincent on a hill overlooking the valley where they had built their life together. The Fletcher Ranch continued for generations, always maintaining its unique character as a place where different worlds met and blended. The family never forgot the story of how it all began, with a cowboy who gave his winter supplies to a wandering woman and a woman who returned 3 months later with a tribe, bringing with her not just people, but love, family, and purpose. Thomas, Daniel, Mary, and Joseph all lived long lives, each contributing to the family legacy in their own way. Thomas's children became successful ranchers. Daniel's line produced rodeo champions and horse trainers known throughout the West. Mary's descendants became doctors and nurses, continuing her tradition of healing. Joseph's children became lawyers and activists, fighting for Native American rights well into the 20th century. In the small cemetery on the hill, 2 headstones stand side by side. One reads, "Vincent Fletcher, beloved husband, father, and friend, man who shares winter, 1843–1914. The other, Clara Fletcher, beloved wife, mother, and teacher, heart of the people, 1854–1919. Between them, planted by their children, grows a tree native to Montana, its roots deep in the earth they both loved, its branches reaching toward the sky, a living symbol of 2 lives that intertwined and created something beautiful, lasting, and true." The story of Vincent and Clara became legend in Montana, passed down through generations. People spoke of the cowboy who saved a Cheyenne woman and married her, who sheltered her people and built a family that bridged 2 worlds. Some of the details changed with each telling, but the heart of the story remained the same. That love, compassion, and human decency can transcend any divide. In later years, historians and sociologists would study the Fletcher family as an example of successful cultural integration during a time of terrible conflict. The ranch became a historical site, preserved as a testament to what was possible when people chose understanding over hatred, acceptance over fear. But for the family themselves, for the great-great-grandchildren of Vincent and Clara, the story was simpler and more profound. It was about a man who saw someone in need and helped without counting the cost. About a woman who rewarded that kindness with loyalty and love. About a family built on mutual respect and shared sacrifice. The valley where it all happened remained in the Fletcher family for over a century. The original cabin, expanded many times over the years, still stood as part of the larger ranch house. Inside, preserved in a place of honor, were artifacts from that first winter. The blankets Vincent wrapped around Clara, the knife he gave her when she left to find her people, the eagle feather red hawk placed in Vincent's hair during his adoption ceremony. These objects were not just relics. They were reminders of choices made and prices paid. They were proof that one person's compassion could change the world, at least for the people lucky enough to be touched by it. Vincent Fletcher started as a lonely cowboy in an isolated Montana valley, preparing for a hard winter. He could have lived and died that way, forgotten by history, leaving no mark on the world. Instead, because he chose kindness in a moment when cruelty would have been easier, he became something more. A husband, a father, a bridge between worlds, a legend. And Clara, who wandered into that valley more dead than alive, became equally legendary. A survivor, a teacher, a mother to children who would change the world in small but significant ways. A woman who never forgot where she came from but also embraced where she was going. Together, they proved that love was stronger than prejudice, that family was more than blood, and that the simplest acts of human decency could have profound and lasting consequences. Their story ended, as all stories must, with death and memory. But the love they shared, the family they built, and the example they set continued long after they were gone. In the hearts of their descendants, in the land they cherished, in the stories told around fires on cold winter nights, Vincent and Clara lived on. And in that living on, in that continuation of their legacy, was the truest form of immortality, not being remembered, but being part of something that grows and changes and touches new lives with each generation. The valley still exists, nestled in the Montana mountains. The Fletcher Ranch still operates, though it has changed hands and purposes over the years. But if you visit on a clear evening when the sun sets behind the western peaks and the first stars emerge, you can almost feel them there. Vincent and Clara, the cowboy and the Cheyenne woman, still walking their land, still building their dream, still proving that love can bridge any divide and survive any challenge. Their story began with winter supplies shared in desperate need. It grew into a love that spanned cultures and challenged conventions. It ended with a legacy that continues to inspire. The legacy of choosing compassion, of building bridges instead of walls, of proving that our common humanity matters more than our differences. In the end, Vincent Fletcher was just a man who did the right thing. Clara was just a woman who needed help and found love instead. Together, they were extraordinary. Together, they changed not just their own lives but the lives of everyone who came after them. Together, they proved that the smallest acts of kindness can have the largest consequences, and that love, real love, can overcome anything. And that, truly, is the greatest legacy anyone can leave behind.